Welcome, my servant.
Even though she knew I had come to introduce myself as her future daughter-in-law, this was the first thing she said. What? I was stunned, thinking I must have misheard. My future mother-in-law looked at me, chuckling softly.
Oh, not a servant, with a face that shabby.
And then, my fiancé, Jack, whom I thought was on my side, betrayed me in an unimaginable way. He glanced at my face and burst out laughing.
Look at that poor face. I'd love to see your parents.
Seriously, if they came to a wealthy family like ours, they might just faint.
Jack and his mother continued to look down on me. They were even mocking my parents, and I couldn't stand it any longer. When they weren't looking, I quietly sent a message to my father. He replied immediately.
I'll be there soon.
I'm going to step outside for a bit of fresh air. I couldn't bear to hear any more of Jack and his mother's insults.
Don't run away.
Jack's crude laughter echoed behind me. I stepped outside and waited for my father's arrival. 10 minutes later, I brought my father to meet Jack and his mother.
I'm the servant's father.
His voice was calm, but his eyes weren't smiling at all.
What?
Jack's mother, who must have recognized my father's face, suddenly froze. My name is Emily Watson. I turned 30 this year. I work in the office of a small company called Sawyer Machinery, and I have tried to live my life as inconspicuously as possible. That's why I usually wear only foundation for makeup. I also favor navy or black clothing. I don't wear contact lenses but wear strong prescription glasses instead. The reason I go to such lengths is that my father has a job that puts him in the public eye, and I have been affected by it since I was a child. My father is an actor. He was apparently quite popular in the past, and women would surround him when he walked down the street. He often appears on TV in supporting roles, so he is somewhat recognizable to the public. Up until middle school, I had a tough time because of my father. My classmates would ask for his autograph, and their parents would demand to meet him. I refused all these requests, which often led to criticism from those around me. They probably thought I was being unfair. I was even bullied by jealous classmates. I didn't want to cause any trouble for my beloved father. I also hated being seen as someone riding on his coattails. So, I decided to dress as plainly as possible and went to a high school where no one knew me. Fortunately, since Watson is a common last name, I was able to live a normal life from high school onwards. And maybe because I looked so plain, no men ever approached me. I was able to enjoy a carefree student life. I loved talking about comics with my girlfriends, and those were the happiest times of my life. I met my fiancé, Jack, after I started working, with zero experience in love. Jack worked for a company that leased the copy machines we used at my office. I had little direct contact with Jack. He would come regularly to check on the machines, and we'd exchange a few words at most. Our relationship changed dramatically when the copy machine broke down. That day, I had been preparing materials for a meeting scheduled for the next day. But in the middle of my work, the copy machine stopped working. I was in big trouble. If things stayed like this, I wouldn't have the materials ready in time for the meeting. So, I hastily called Jack. He came right away and checked the machine. "Can it be fixed?" I asked anxiously, and Jack answered with a smile.
Don't worry, I'll take care of it.
At that moment, I fell for Jack's smile. In the end, the machine couldn't be fixed, but Jack arranged for a replacement. We managed to have everything ready in time for the meeting. Having fallen for Jack, I tried my best to get his attention. I asked for his contact information and frequently called him. Eventually, I confessed my feelings and we started dating. Even after we began dating, Jack was always kind. He was always considerate, and I had never seen him angry. I thought that even if he found out who my father was, he might still treat me kindly. With that thought in mind, I decided to propose to Jack after 3 months of dating. He accepted immediately. I remember feeling so incredibly happy. However, there was one thing that bothered me. It was my appearance. I had always worn thick glasses. Even on dates, I dressed plainly. I couldn't break my old habits. In reality, I looked just like my father. I have strong, defined features. Because of my looks, I was often the target of jealousy from other girls in middle school. Even boys judged me by my appearance, and it was tough. But with Jack, I thought it would be okay. I decided to slowly start changing my appearance for the sake of the Jack I loved. That's what I thought. However, after getting engaged to Jack, I started to feel uneasy. Before the engagement, Jack seemed like a kind person, but lately, he had started making condescending comments about me. Just the other day, we went to a bridal fair to decide on a wedding venue. Jack invited me to go, so I went with him. The place he took me was dazzling. It was a luxurious guest house, perfect for a large wedding with over 100 guests. Seeing that place, I felt lost. I didn't have many friends from school days. Plus, I didn't want to stand out, so I had hoped for a small venue with just a ceremony. Honestly, I wanted to leave right away. But Jack seemed to be having fun, so I couldn't say anything. So, I held back and tried to get through the time. After it ended, we stopped by a cafe. Jack was in a great mood.
That wedding venue earlier was nice, right? Personally, I'd like an even more extravagant reception.
Jack said, sipping his coffee. At this rate, we would end up with that wedding venue. Panicking, I tried to share my preferences with Jack. I think a wedding just for the two of us would be nice. I don't really like standing out. I thought Jack, being kind, would surely make some concessions. But reality was completely different. Jack looked at me and snorted.
Well, I agree that a plain girl like Emily wouldn't suit a wedding like that. Besides, there's no dress that would go with those thick glasses, right?
What? I was bewildered by Jack's remark.
But weddings are about the families, right? My family is wealthy. If we don't have a decent wedding, it won't look good.
I was at a loss for words. The kind Jack I had known seemed to be looking down on me, as if he had become a different person. I was deeply shocked by Jack's attitude. And as I stood there, confused, Jack said something even more hurtful.
Emily, just shut up and do what I say. A plain girl like you should be grateful you're even getting married.
Suddenly, Jack's face turned serious as he said that. I was stunned by his words. I even felt a sense of fear seeing Jack's serious expression. Then, in the next moment, he smiled and said,
I'll decide everything for you. All you have to do is say yes and follow my lead.
Yes. I didn't know how to respond, so I gave an awkward smile. Maybe getting engaged to Jack was actually a mistake. But it's too late to undo it now. I had already informed my company and parents about the marriage. And even after everything, I still had feelings for Jack. I hoped that someday he would return to the kind person he was before we got engaged. So, despite being confused by Jack's changes, I felt I had no choice but to continue with the engagement. But even after that, Jack kept making comments that upset me. Each time, it hurt my heart a little more. However, I couldn't bring myself to dislike Jack. Even when I thought about breaking up with him, memories of the kind Jack kept flashing in my mind. I still loved Jack. So, despite my confusion over Jack's changes, I continued with the engagement. Then one day, something happened that left me even more bewildered. It was the day Jack and I finalized the arrangements at the wedding venue. After visiting several venues, Jack chose the luxurious guest house we had visited first. With a triumphant air, Jack said,
Of course, a fancy wedding suits me best. Though I know it doesn't match Emily at all.
Jack laughed heartily, hurting my feelings. And so, to complete the arrangements, we headed to that guest house. On the way there, we ran into someone.
Oh, Jack, is that you?
Mom, what are you doing here?
Jack looked surprised as he saw the woman. Then he introduced her to me.
Emily, this is my mom. Mom, this is Emily Watson, my fiancée. I mentioned I was getting married, remember?
Jack's mother smiled warmly and greeted me.
I'm Jack's mother. You seem like a serious young lady. Where do you work? I'm sure it's at some big company, right?
This was my first time meeting Jack's mother. I answered nervously. I work at Sawyer Machinery, in the office. Jack's mother frowned slightly.
Sawyer Machinery. Never heard of it.
Jack then jumped into the conversation.
Sawyer Machinery is one of my clients. It's a small company with about 30 employees, so it makes sense that you wouldn't know about it, Mom.
Upon hearing this, Jack's mother's eyebrows furrowed even more.
I thought Jack's fiancé would be working at a more respectable company. That must mean your salary isn't much. Are you planning to make Jack struggle?
I'm sorry. It was true that my current salary wasn't very high. So, all I could do was apologize to her. Jack's mother sighed deeply and continued.
Anyway, I don't want you to be a burden on Jack. Our family has a long and respected lineage. We don't need some girl whose background we don't even know.
I see. I responded awkwardly, confused by her words, but she only seemed to get more heated.
By the way, what kind of people are your parents? Surely, they work for a proper company, right?
She glared at me with piercing eyes. Well, my father is. I was trying to answer, feeling flustered when I noticed something about her back. It was something I had seen before. As I fell silent, Jack spoke up.
Mom, calm down. We'll visit you with Emily soon to introduce.
Well, I'm not too thrilled about it.
Jack's mother glared at me with a displeased look. My first impression seemed to be the worst possible in her eyes. Feeling overwhelmed by the difficult path ahead for this marriage, I quietly sighed. Then came the day for the official introduction. "This is incredible," I muttered involuntarily in front of Jack's family home. The sight before me was far beyond what I had expected. Since Jack's mother had mentioned their prestigious family, I had imagined they were wealthy. But the reality was much more than I had anticipated. The gate was automatic, and there was even an elevator inside. There were also 10 luxury cars parked outside. All of them were foreign cars, likely Jack's father's hobby. Jack turned to me and said,
My dad is out for work today, so it's just my mom. Don't worry, just relax like always.
Jack smiled, but my face tensed up even more. His mother had been very harsh with me last time. I was sure she would say something unpleasant again today. So, we headed into the living room where Jack's mother was waiting. "Hello. Thank you for seeing me the other day," I said as I greeted politely to her. Then, to my surprise, Jack's mother said something unbelievable.
"Welcome, my servant."
That was her first greeting, even though she knew I was there to announce our engagement. What? I was stunned, thinking I must have misheard. Jack's mother chuckled softly as she looked at me.
"No, you're not a servant. With a face that shabby, I really needed someone to use for free labor."
A servant. What a terrible thing to say. Jack's mother laughed with a delighted expression.
"Jack told me I could treat you like a servant. Looks like he just wanted to marry someone who would do exactly as he says. My condolences."
Jack, what does she mean? I asked Jack, my face turning pale. It must be a bad joke. That's what I wanted to believe. But Jack, whom I thought was on my side, betrayed me in the worst way. He glanced at my face and burst out laughing.
Look at that poor face. I'd love to see your parents. I bet they have plain faces too. Maybe we should use them as servants too.
Jack laughed loudly.
"It's certainly appealing to have someone who would work for free, but if your parents came to a wealthy family like ours, they might just faint."
Jack and his mother kept looking down on me. Then, Jack's mother smirked and asked,
"By the way, what does your father do for a living? He's not homeless, is he?"
"That's not true." Jack then burst into laughter and replied to his mother,
Mom, that's not a profession. Considering how Emily is, it's clear he doesn't have a stable job. Oh, I'm laughing so hard my stomach hurts.
They continued to ridicule my parents, assuming they must have low education or plain appearances. I clenched my teeth in frustration and listened to their insults. Jack and his mother were unbelievably rude. They were even looking down on my parents, and I couldn't stand it anymore. While Jack and his mother weren't paying attention, I quietly sent a message to my father. "I need you to come right now." I also sent him a map of Jack's house. It was the map Jack had sent me for today's introduction. Today should be my father's day off. He was probably relaxing at home right now. Fortunately, my father replied in less than a minute.
I'm on my way.
I felt relieved reading his response. Then I turned to Jack and his mother and said, "I'm feeling a bit sick, so I'll step outside for some fresh air." I couldn't bear to hear any more of their insults. I decided to wait quietly outside until my father arrived. That's what I thought.
"Oh, is that so? Then, Jack, Let's continue having tea at our leisure.
Jack's mother seemed delighted to be alone with Jack.
Emily, don't run away, okay?
Jack's screwed laughter echoed. I stepped out and waited for my father's arrival. 10 minutes later, my father showed up, wearing dark sunglasses.
Emily, what's going on? I thought today was the introduction to your fiance's family. I was surprised to be called out suddenly.
He looked at me with a puzzled expression. Dad, I'm so upset. Seeing my father's face, I felt a wave of relief and started crying. Even though I tried to hold back, the tears wouldn't stop.
What's wrong, Emily?
Seeing me cry, my father started to panic. I explained everything that had happened to him. How Jack's behavior had changed after our engagement. And how he and his mother were looking down on me. I couldn't stand them looking down on you, Dad, without knowing anything. Even as I explained, my tears didn't stop. My father listened to me quietly, but he seemed to be quietly furious. Then I told him something about Jack's mother. At that moment, my father smirked. He took off his sunglasses and handed them to me.
We're going in there right now. I'm going to make them regret hurting you, Emily.
I made up my mind after hearing my father's words. I no longer had any love left for Jack. All that remained was a desire for revenge. I've made up my mind too. I'll make Jack and his mother regret this. I did something and then put on my father's sunglasses. Then, together with my father, I entered Jack's family home. I stood before Jack and his mother with my father by my side. Sorry to keep you waiting. I stood firm, right next to my father. Jack stared at me, confused by the sight of me wearing sunglasses.
Why? Why are you suddenly wearing sunglasses?
He muttered while looking at me. Jack's mother initially smirked when she saw me, but when she noticed my father beside me, she froze in shock. It occurred to me that people tend to freeze when they're too surprised. She probably thought that once I returned, she could start her nasty comments again. But too bad for her. I wasn't going to let things go her way. I planned to push her right down to the bottom. Jack's mother must have already realized who my father was. My father spoke to Jack's mother.
I'm the father of this servant.
His voice was calm, but his eyes weren't smiling. His good looks only added to his intensity.
What?
Jack's mother, who likely knew who my father was, stiffened up dramatically.
How? Why is Robert here? Is this some kind of prank?
She muttered nervously. Her cheeks slightly flushed. There was a hint of joy in her tone. Her eyes sparkling like those of a young girl. Jack, still bewildered, seemed to have no idea what was going on. My father ignored her question and kept looking intently at Jack and his mother. Jack's mother seemed embarrassed as she met my father's gaze. It was quite unbecoming for a woman of her age. I looked at her with a cold stare. Jack, finally snapping out of his stupor, asked in confusion.
Robert, is he someone you know, Mom?
Jack probably didn't know who my father was. For people of his mother's generation, my father was quite well known. But younger people might not know him unless they had seen him on TV series. Jack's mother shot a sharp look at him.
Jack, how could you say something so rude? This is Robert Watson, a legendary actor and my first love.
What?
Jack looked completely incredulous. Then Jack's mother turned to my father with a smile.
I'm a huge fan of yours, Robert. Look, even this.
She quickly grabbed her bag and showed it to my father.
This is a keychain that you could only buy through the fan club. I've been a fan of yours for over 20 years.
She continued, eagerly trying to impress my father.
Mom,
Jack seemed exasperated by his mother's sudden change in behavior. Jack's mother kept talking to my father, clearly excited to see her favorite actor in person. But my father's gaze at her was quite stern. Finally, after staying silent, he spoke up in response to her words.
I understand you're a fan of mine. However, you tried to treat my beloved daughter, Emily, as a servant, didn't you?
What?
Jack's mother's demeanor changed in an instant. Her face turned pale, and she froze in place. She was visibly trembling. Ignoring her, my father continued speaking.
And you labeled me a homeless person without even meaning me. That's quite a rude thing to say.
He glared at her. Jack's mother began to panic.
No, I didn't know that Emily's father was Robert. We'd be delighted to have Robert as part of the family, right, Jack?
yeah.
Jack seemed to be overwhelmed by his mother. Desperately trying to save face, Jack's mother kept explaining herself to my father. I listened to her with utter disbelief. Until my father arrived, Jack's mother had been looking down on me and him non-stop. But the moment she saw my father, she completely changed her tune. I couldn't feel anything but distrust.
If you look closely, Emily really resembles Robert. Such a lovely young lady. My earlier remarks were just out of jealousy, fearing my son would be taken away. If I had known about Robert, I would have treated you much better.
Jack's mother kept trying desperately to cover up. My father watched her with an irritated expression. Watching their exchange, I realized I couldn't let this go on and trouble my father any longer. Besides, this was my problem. I needed to tell her directly myself. So, I spoke up to Jack's mother. I'm breaking off the engagement with Jack. There's no way we'll ever be family.
What, Emily? I was wrong. This is my chance to be family with Robert. Please reconsider.
Jack's mother looked like she was about to cry as she tried to persuade me. She had treated me so poorly until now. Even if she seemed to be on the verge of tears, I couldn't trust her. I looked at her with cold eyes. Seeing me silent, she seemed to think she could still convince me. She smiled at me sweetly.
You want to marry Jack, don't you, Emily? I promise never to oppose it again. I'll do anything you want, just for you.
Driven by her desire to be family with my father, she clung to me. Her words were the complete opposite of what she had said before. I felt nothing but contempt for her constant flip-flopping. I muttered under my breath, "No way."
What did you say?
She didn't seem to hear me, tilting her head in confusion. So, this time, I shouted loudly, "I absolutely do not want to be family with you."
What?
Jack's mother looked bewildered by my outburst. I expressed my true feelings to her. As soon as you heard where I worked, all you did was look down on me, and you spoke terribly about my father. I can never forgive you. I told her firmly.
What?
Seeing that she couldn't convince me anymore, she turned to my father. She smiled and tried to appeal to him.
Emily says this, but surely you, Robert, want your daughter to be happy, right? We have plenty of money, so your daughter will definitely be happy with us.
Sure, some people might think that money brings happiness. But not me. Understanding how I felt, my father counted her words.
Emily values love more than money, and we have enough money ourselves. I earn quite well from my acting career.
Og.
Jack's mother was at a loss for words. No wonder. After all, my father is a well-known actor who frequently appears on TV series. He earns a lot and is not in need of money. Coming from a wealthy background, there was no benefit for me to marry just for money. Jack's mother seemed to realize this and fell silent. Probably because she couldn't think of a good way to turn the situation around. Seeing her speechless, my father continued.
You say you're a fan of mine, but I detest people who would mistreat my beloved daughter. Don't ever call yourself my fan again.
He glared at her as he spoke. Tears began to pour from Jack's mother's eyes.
If Robert hates me, I won't be able to live.
She collapsed in tears. Jack, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up.
If I stay quiet, you'll say whatever you want. Emily, if you break off our engagement, you'll regret it. No one else will have anything to do with a plain girl like you.
Jack smirked.
Hey, Jack.
His mother tried to stop him in front of my father. But Jack wouldn't stop.
I picked a plain girl like you because I thought you'd do whatever I said. I was planning to cheat on you with cute girls all I wanted once we got married. This is so annoying.
He continued to ramble on about things no one asked him. Hearing Jack's words, I remained calm. In the end, there was no love from Jack at all. He just wanted to marry someone who would be obedient and convenient for him. My feelings for Jack had long since faded away, too. While I was thinking about all this, Jack continued his selfish tirade.
You!
My father clenched his teeth and looked ready to grab Jack at any moment. It was time for me to step in. Dad, wait. I stopped him. Still wearing the sunglasses, I let out a small smile.
What?
Jack seemed slightly unsettled by my calm demeanor. Do I still look plain to you? I quickly took off my father's sunglasses.
What?
Jack stared at my face, stunned. No wonder he was shocked. Underneath the sunglasses, I had put on a full face of makeup. Normally, I only wore foundation. But now, I had eyeshadow, mascara, and eyeliner on. In fact, after I cried when I met my father, I quickly did my makeup. Even with just eye makeup, my appearance had changed significantly.
Is it really you, Emily?
Jack's face turned a little red. He was probably captivated by how my face looked with makeup. Yes, of course, it's me. I've always tried not to stand out, so I purposely made myself look plain. But I've decided to stop hiding who I am. I used to try to stay in the background because of my father's fame. That's why I didn't want to stand out, so I've kept a low profile until now. But because of that, Jack and his mother had spoken poorly about my father. I realized that if it meant defending my father, I didn't mind standing out a bit. That's how I felt. Jack, his face still red, said,
If you looked like that from the start, I'd have been nice to you. I'll take you back if you look like this now. Let's cancel the breakup. And while you're at it, introduce me to some beautiful actresses through your dad.
Who would call off a broken engagement now? And how dare he ask me to introduce him to actresses? I firmly told Jack. The breakup is final. I don't need you anymore, Jack. I'll also cancel the wedding venue reservation.
What?
Jack looked stunned. But I had no intention of letting him off that easily. I decided to push Jack further. Of course, you'll cover the cancellation fee for the wedding venue. It's only fair, right? Jack's mother raised her voice in protest.
Wait a minute. Covering the full cost is too much.
Jack looked confused and couldn't come up with any response. Then my father spoke up.
Why not have Jack's dad pay for it? With all those luxury cars he owns, I'm sure he can afford it.
My father said this with a cheerful smile. It was time to play my trump card. If you're not satisfied, we can take this to court. But keep in mind, my father is a famous actor. You might get some backlash from his more extreme fans once they hear about this on the news. My father had a lot of passionate fans. In the past, a critic who called my father a terrible actor faced severe consequences. Harassing phone calls, letters with knives in them. The damage was immense. It even made the news at one point. Jack's mother seemed to remember that incident, and her face turned pale. She kept trying to convince Jack.
Jack, just cover the cancellation fee. Who knows what could happen?
From his mother's expression, Jack seemed to grasp the gravity of the situation.
What? You've got to be kidding me.
Jack's face turned desperate, and he sank to his knees. I realized I didn't need Jack in my life anymore. Dad, let's go home. Ignoring Jack and his mother, who were both looking defeated, I left with my father. Jack and I officially broke off the engagement. Jack ended up having to cover the entire cancellation fee for the wedding venue. It turned out that Jack's father was the head of a major corporation, and my father had appeared in one of their commercials. Because of that connection, my father informed Jack's father about everything Jack and his mother had done. Naturally, Jack's father, who knew nothing about it, was furious. He confronted Jack and his mother harshly. He also pressured Jack to cover the entire cancellation fee for the wedding venue. As a result, Jack had to pay tens of thousands of dollars. The consequences also affected Jack's mother. Jack's father demanded a divorce, not just because of how she treated us, but also for other reasons. It turns out Jack's mother had a bad habit of overspending. She had been spending a considerable amount of money on following my father. The source of that money was Jack's father. Apparently, he had already lost all patience with her. Moreover, my father revealed that Jack's mother had sent him quite provocative love letters.
I want to divorce and be with you, Robert. My current husband is just a source of money.
That was the kind of thing she had written in those letters to my father. This made Jack's father even angrier. Though Jack's mother resisted, she was eventually forced into a divorce with a lawyer involved. I heard through the grapevine that Jack's mother is now living a miserable life, saying, "This wasn't supposed to happen." Incidentally, she was also kicked out of my father's fan club. Given her troublesome behavior as a fan, it was inevitable. I doubt happiness will come to Jack's mother, who has lost everything. It's a consequence of her own actions. 6 months passed. Jack ended up getting arrested. The reason was his continued stalking of me. He probably couldn't forget how I looked after I took off those sunglasses. Jack started showing up frequently in front of me. Even after I quit my job, he would wait outside my house. He kept calling me over and over.
Please, let's get engaged again. I need you.
He would beg, crying on the phone, but it was clear he only cared about my looks. A stark contrast to how he treated me before he saw me with makeup. I had no use for a man who only cared about appearances. I politely refused and blocked his number. But Jack's behavior only escalated. I consulted the police several times. At times, I felt genuinely threatened. Frustrated, I finally filed a complaint with the police. My father supported this decision. Eventually, Jack forcibly broke into my house, leading to his arrest. As a result of his arrest, Jack was fired from his job. Now, all Jack has left is tens of thousands of dollars in debt. He will probably never have a normal life from here on out. It's the price for looking down on others so much. It's karma. Since then, I've started working as my father's manager. It's very different from my previous office job, and there are many challenges. Managing my father's schedule, accompanying him to work sites, and negotiating his pay. I used to just commute between my home and the office, rarely speaking to anyone besides my coworkers and mostly staring at my computer. Now, my job is primarily about meeting people and talking to them. It's a complete change from before, but I find it very fulfilling now. Being a manager is a glamorous job, but it's not just that. It's a job that supports my father behind the scenes so he can focus on his acting career. The hours are irregular, and it requires flexibility. Most importantly, it allows me to support my father closely. I want to repay him for all the worry I've caused him. It's still a job I've only just begun. There will surely be many more challenges ahead. But I want to keep looking forward and do my best. Today, too, I continue to work hard beside my beloved father.